this country. Joining me now is Head of Advocacy at Tax Justice UK, Rachael Henry. Rachael, thank you very much. Something I'm sure you welcome, the government considering abolishing the non-dom tax status. How much would this raise for the British taxpayer if this so-called loophole was closed?
Hello, Jake. Thanks very much for having me on. I very much do welcome the Chancellor potentially doing this. This could potentially raise 3.6 billion. And it's worth pointing out that this is a really unfair, outdated loophole that basically means that extremely wealthy people that come to the UK and keep much of their wealth offshore can pay little to no tax. Meanwhile, teachers, doctors, lawyers are paying for the roads and bins that these non-doms use. So it's also happening at a context where public services are crumbling. So I think I absolutely welcome the non-dom rule being scrapped. That's essential. But one thing that I am very concerned about is that the Chancellor will be using this for tax cuts, not investment in public services. And that's not what people want. People don't want tax cuts. They want to be able to get a dentist appointment, to be able to get a doctor's appointment. They want their schools not to be crumbling and their roads not to be littered with potholes. So we need to be using this money to invest in public services.
OK, well, before, Rachel, we get on to the fact that you say it needs to be invested in public services, we can come on to that. You say this is completely outdated. We hear very often countries like Portugal, Greece and Spain introducing tax incentive visas to cut the tax of people to go and locate at their country. So Britain isn't the only nation that does this. Will it not put us at a competitive disadvantage if we abolish it and others around the world keep other schemes?
This is a tax that has been on the books since 1799. The economy has changed a vast amount since the 18th century. So this is an outdated tax loophole.
Well, Rachel, sorry, could I just pick up there because of course, income tax, using your argument, introduced to help us fight the Napoleonic Wars. I don't claim to be the world's greatest historian, but I don't think Napoleon is quite the threat that he once was, is by that very argument outdated. But I put it to you, other nations around the world have very similar schemes to this, Portugal, Spain and Greece, to name but a few. So why would we get rid of it and just say to people, we'll leave the UK and go to those other nations?
Portugal are scrapping their equivalent because they found that it had really detrimental impacts on the wider economy. And the big problem with the UK's is that it's set up in such a generous way. Essentially, people can come here for about 15 years and pay no tax. It would make sense to have some sort of system where people who are coming for very short amounts of time aren't pulled into the UK tax system straight away. But we certainly don't need a system where people aren't contributing for 15 years whilst living here and benefiting from all of our public services and our quality of life at the same time when the rest of us are paying our fair share. What I think this is very important to point out is that scrapping the non-dom status is incredibly popular. That's because the vast majority of people really support higher taxes on wealthy people and they don't feel that they're paying their fair share. So if we did a tax of people with assets over 10 million, just 2%, it would raise 22 billion. It would only be 20,000.
Well, let me put it to you that people have often already paid tax on their assets. That's why I don't support a wealth tax. But taxes that wealthy people do pay is things like capital gains tax on sales of second properties. Do you have any concern about Angela Rayner and the sale of her council house? Do you think all the tax has been paid in that case?
I'm afraid I don't know the details in detail on sort of people's personal tax cases. What I do think is that capital gains tax is another unfair tax. It's one that levies just 20% in comparison to the higher rate, actually the additional rate of income tax being 45%. That means that people who pay capital gains tax pay a much lower rate than doctors, nurses and teachers. So,
but I would say to you, Rachel, we're really grateful for having you on. There is a difference between people earning income and making a capital profit, often people running their own small businesses and things like that. But thank you very much for joining us. You've absolutely made the point on behalf of taxpayers and others. I disagree with quite a lot of what you said. I wish we had more time.